yeah, and there's a little bit, and again, the world of art and the world of symbolism, because I was always studying symbolism, and now, like I said, now I don't have to tell people I speak only one language. I'll say English and astrology.
Show me stars in the sky.
And we're live. Woo! Hello, world. So, welcome to Talk. I'm Stevie Henry.
I'm so happy to be back.
I'm so happy to have you, Julia Mihas. Am I pronouncing your name right?
You pronounced it so correctly.
Okay. One of my favorite astrologers and humans at this point. And we did an IG live together, which was really fun and all over the place. So reference that, everyone. And we're just here to talk to you. I'm here to talk to you today. A little origin inspiration. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. And I've got my mug too.
What is your mug?
I'm drinking coffee, and this is a mug from a bachelorette party I went to. So it's a little lewd. There's a little something there. Yeah. It was wild.
That's way more wild than my mug, which is
well, your guy's naked too.
Oh yeah, he is. He's a little naked. He doesn't really have anything. He's like cartoon naked, but
yeah, so we're enjoying our erotic vessels.
I'm drinking rose in my erotic vessel.
I'm drinking coffee. I need to start drinking non-caffeinated things.
Well, okay, there's a little superfood coffee with the rose. So
okay.
I'm not doing that well, but it's a boost. So stoked. I have questions for you.
Good.
So okay. It's really hard for me to ask you questions because I was trying to write questions for this last night. Last night, because I'm the ultimate procrastinator. And like every time I talk to you, I want to ask you everything because you seem like you've had a really interesting life. So you grew up in Manhattan. Is this correct? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. First off, like not on the questions. Tell me about your childhood. What was that like?
My childhood. So I went to school in Manhattan. So, I guess the city kid childhood in a lot of ways, which has its ups and its downs. Definitely. It's like, I think New York kids are exposed to a lot more facets of life than the average kid. But what was lucky about my childhood was I got to spend a lot of time in Greece too, because my family's from Greece. So I had grandparents there. And so I got some experience of being able to run around outside and not, that kind of like neighborhood kid experience, have like a little lemonade stand, and do all. So I was lucky I had a little bit of both of those.
I had no idea. Like every time I talk to you, I learn some giant, crazy, fun fact. So where in Greece? How often?
The little sort of suburb called Guliagmeni, which is outside of Athens, where my grandparents used to live. And they were a huge part of my childhood. And so, it was just kind of, there was a beach nearby. It was just, it was great. I was very, very, very lucky.
Do you speak Greek?
Terribly. I only speak one language, though I speak it very well. That's what I say, because it's only English. Really, I can do some very light conversation, and I have tried. I'm dyslexic. I'm really bad at languages. Astrology is a much easier language for me.
Yeah.
Than the other stuff. I've really, really tried. Are you good with other languages?
Oh no. My grandmother was like from Paris, like French speaking.
Oh, cool.
I was surrounded by like, her and my aunt, and didn't pick up a word. In fact, it scarred me. My grandmother was such an intimidating human that like when people speak, like I have such a hard time speaking languages. Like I feel like I can read and hear better than I can speak, but I speak English and I don't even know how well I speak English.
Pretty well with the interviews that you do. But yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as you. But then, I mean, how was the language of symbolism and divination for you? Was that something where you're like, this is making sense? I feel the same way.
Because it's like, you just sit, it's like, it's different because it's not as, I mean, on one hand, it's structured, yes, because you have to memorize things. But there's, that moment as an astrologer, and this is I think you have to be an astrologer to understand this. Maybe it's like this with art or something, where you're like staring at a chart for a while and you're like, I fucking no idea what's going on. And then it pops and then it starts speaking to you. And they're like, oh, look at Venus looking over there talking to Saturn. Like it just suddenly like makes sense. And you're like staring at this whole world and people are like, what are you looking at? And you're like, can't you see like those puzzles that you stare at for a long time and you back up and it comes out?
Yes. No, I absolutely know that. And I think like, especially when you first start getting into it, I remember looking at the charts and being like, this looks like a freaking pizza with too many toppings. Like what, and then you get too granular and you're like, and you try to overly focus on something. And then I think as you just go along with it, you get more comfortable in that space. And maybe the space is 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I always try to give myself some time before reading so I can just be in that space for a little while before, some big clicks happen. But yeah, you just get a little bit more comfortable with the space. That's all.
Absolutely. And you are going to, I don't know what it is, Julia, you're going to kill me right now, but would you mind exiting and re-entering? Because like you're blurry again. And I really want people to enjoy your beautiful face. I mean, I do. I just want to
You're very sweet, cutie. I'll be right back.
Oh, thank you. Hello, friends. I wonder if I think this is live. If anyone's here, hello. I'll probably edit out this part. I might not edit out this part. Talking to my friend, Julia Mihas. We are talking astrology, art. This is my mug. I've yet to name him. Lou. Lou seems like a good name for this mug. How is everyone? It's kind of strange when no one can answer me. The lights are a little bright. I look like a vampire. Waiting for Julia to join me again. She got back. And I'm exiting the full screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Ah, brilliant. There you are.
How's Lou doing?
Lou's great. It's like I'm talking to myself. This is strange. Okay, pizza, too many toppings. You don't want to hear a secret? Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll still stare at a chart and have no idea what's going on.
That's fine. That happens to me too. Just keep staring at it or take a break and then stare at it later. That's another thing. That's like with clients and stuff, because again, there's always a little bit of a fear of like staring for too long. Yeah. Uh-huh. Try to look at things ahead of time to get through that staring phase. Because again, Absolutely. You can stare and then the next day you look again and it's different.
It's this interesting thing. And I like that we just sort of dove into this craft talk, but it's interesting styles. Like I have some friends that will spend like 2 hours with every chart and they're like writing and taking copious notes. And I've tried that, but my brain can't work. I remember like one of my teachers said that he just looks at a chart, goes for a 10-minute walk, and then dives in. And I'll usually take a little more time, but there's this moment where it's like I have to look and I think about some things. And it's like, it's always for me like in the silence where it comes together.
Wow. But I think also, I feel like you are very in touch with your intuitive conduit. I think that you like that's like the first, my impression of you is that's the first foot you put forward. And I actually envy that a little bit because I feel like I have a tendency to be a little too academic about things. And like, and then I'm the one doing all the notes and kind of, and using the brain versus the intuition first. And then the intuition comes later. But maybe it's just some people respond with one before the other.
Yeah. I try to take notes and I have really big handwriting. We draw on the notes. It's a lot over here. But I really, really respect the academic approach. I try really hard to sharpen my brain. Yeah.
Your brain is plenty sharp. Plus you also, you come from the fast readings. You do fast readings.
I do fast readings, and
develop. It's probably because, like, for me, I'm trying to be a bit more like you with and I'm trying to learn how to do things a little bit faster, leave the intellectual analysis aside, and try to just sort of top into, I guess, what I'm calling it, the intuitive conduit right away. But probably just from how you've started your practice of having to go really fast, you've had to tap into that a lot faster. And it's like, whatever gets you there.
Yeah. I've noticed, I don't know if you feel can I share your rising sign publicly?
Oh, sure, of course.
Your Aries rising, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Aries sun too, right?
Yes.
Yes. Happy almost birthday. We share birthdays.
You as well.
Thank you. I think this is like Christopher Renstrom. I believe it's Christopher Renstrom referred to Aries as like the coach dad energy. And I totally get
love that. He's so fun.
He's so good. And I think like when I look at charts, I had this moment of like someone would be like, you know, like why are we looking at this first and foremost, right? Like, why are we here? And then it's like, we're here to, I always approach it like we're here to solve a problem. Okay. Like there's problems with your marriage. Let's look at it. We're going to look at the 7th house. We're going to look at Venus. But there's like, to me, it's like, okay, sure. I could spend like, you know, this granular time and there's a place for that, like looking over the year ahead, right? Like day by day or whatever. But really, I'm just kind of like, how are we going to solve the problem? And I don't know if that's sometimes a thing people enjoy. Sometimes I think that's an overwhelming quality for people because they don't actually want to solve problems. Some people just want to hear about themselves.
Well, yeah, there's that. And I feel like you get, I'm more with you in that camp. And I think that approach implies that we're very free will based.
Yeah.
In we practice. And there are practitioners who are more deterministic. And I feel like there's some clients who feel a little bit more passive to me. And actually, I kind of noticed that there can be cultural differences. Like if you get clients from India and they're used to Jyotish, and it can come off as more deterministic and fatalistic, then oftentimes they're just kind of sitting there and looking at me and wanting a message. You know, they want to receive something. And then, but I also think with our individualism in the West, our sense of self-determination in the West, you know, I think that type of coaching style, which I again do too, and is sort of what people like.
Oh yeah, no, true. I like the use of the cultural thing, and it's interesting because I do. I work in an esoteric bookshop. There's a lot of like, I'm the only astrologer, and there's a lot of like psychics, and so I get a lot of people who are like, tell me the future, and then I like get upset because I'm like, you participate in this. Like, no. Anyway.
Yeah. You co-author your fate. That's what I say. I'm just like, you are the co-author here. And I mean, the other metaphor that I give clients is like, there are cosmic influences that are sort of like raining down on us like weather. Like maybe those influences mean that career is going to have some challenges this year. You're going to have challenges with your boss, or, let's say Pluto's on the midheaven and your boss is on a power trip. Or, or maybe there's opportunities and ease in relationship. And so these influences happen, but how you behave under those influences, I have no idea. I can look at certain tendencies in the chart and be like, okay, this person's a little more risk taking. This person's a little bit more closed emotionally. You can see some general tendencies, but that I have no idea how much work someone has done on themselves before they sit with me. I have no idea. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. And that, so it's like, if it's raining outside, are you going to bring an umbrella, or are you going to like plan a picnic and wear your halter top and be caught off guard?
Absolutely. And I think that's like when you say more deterministic, I think that's to me like where the line is, right? Like we look to a chart, right? We want to see the astro weather. We want to see, man, there's like Saturn going through your 7th house. Like what's up? Like we want to be able to prepare people for these things, but also let them know that they have some choice in the matter, because otherwise why would even bother with astrology? Just
Exactly. No, absolutely. And yeah, that's why I'm very much, and again, this is the mystery I contemplate every darn day of my life, which is where exactly is the intersection of free will versus fate? Like, I think about it all the time. I'm never going to have an answer. It's a mystery. Mysteries are to be contemplated. But what I do with a client when they come to see me is I try to identify, okay, where is their agency in this situation? And then let's talk about different actions that can be taken. And that even exists, I think, in Jyotish, the Vedic astrology too. There is a level of that. It's not all fatalistic, because even the word karma means action on some level. Like it's it's even if it feels very deterministic, there is a sense that there have been past actions and there will be future actions, in response to those past actions. So yeah, ultimately, I kind of think that that's where I think it's the most useful.
Absolutely. And I'm no expert on anything, really, let's be real. But when it comes to Jyotish, right, they're really heavy, from my understanding, on remediation, right? And so that's another thing. There are ways, but again, there's a little like remediation takes action. How are we going to fix the solution?
Exactly. That's all it is. Yeah, if you have a weak moon in your chart, like I do in Jyotish, I'm supposed to be, wearing more white or doing these types of chants. And I think there's something to that. I'm not a particularly ritualistic person, because ultimately I think that the rituals just feel a little external for me. And I think everything sort of happens just internally with one's intention and how it gets directed. And that's where the primary thing is inside. So that's where I kind of put my most attention. But again, if the rituals help and it helps you get an alignment of your intuition and your will and your, in order to manifest things, then by all means.
Absolutely. I love how we're just like, this wasn't even on my proposed questions, just coming in.
And we're already off it.
just bring it in. I'm going to go back to Greece for a moment. I'm going to go back to your childhood. Did you, speaking of, like, did you come from a family of rituals? Like,
no, not religious family at all.
Okay.
I was baptized Greek Orthodox. We would, what I like about Greek Orthodoxy, because I love the aesthetics of the ritual. I'm like, I know, and that sounds so superficial, but I love the aesthetics, and it's an extremely aesthetic religion, but it's also a religion that doesn't demand that you understand what's going on. Interestingly enough, like I would go to church with my dad, and there'd be like, this guy in all black who would like, shuffle out from behind a screen with like some incense, and he'd be like, like doing all this, like, and I'd be like, Dad, what's he saying? And my dad's like, oh, he's just performing the mysteries. And I'm like, what does it mean? He's like, I don't think we're supposed to understand what it means. It's just, you're just supposed to watch it. It's a very archaic religion in a lot of ways, but there are other. I feel like in American religion, it's like you have somebody telling you what to do, at the pulpit, I guess, or But I think in Orthodoxy, it's more like it's more of a performance.
Ooh, I feel like I can relate to that. I really grew up without really any religion, but I remember going to synagogue when I was young with my grandpa, and everything was in Hebrew. It was the same thing, just sort of like old men singing. I wasn't smart enough to ask questions though, so same idea.
Well, maybe you were just enjoying the, there's a performance aspect.
No, absolutely. That I think I was like that was all I had to say, was that I can relate to you. I actually really enjoyed not. Maybe this is my talking languages. Maybe this is why I've never learned a language, because I really enjoy not understanding things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And there's something, but it's okay. There's understanding and experiencing.
Yes.
And you can experience it without understanding it.
Absolutely. I'm wondering, like, this is a whole other thing. I just always, like, sometimes I go through to art museums and I don't even think anymore. I just stare, and I'm just hoping I'm absorbing. And it's true. Sometimes like an image will come to my head later on.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. And I think that's you're tapping into a different type of intelligence, I think, when you do that kind of stuff. Like there's the analytical, intellectual, language-based side of your mind. And then there's the other side of the mind, which is more intuitive, more creative, more visual. I call it the irrational mind, but that also kind of gives it a disservice. Like, I think sometimes, sometimes it's like you can have intuitions about things. Like you walk down the street and you're like, oh, that guy's sketching me out. And then you find out that, he is really not a good person or something. Like you sometimes just kind of have these instincts or these waves. And I feel like it's another part of your intelligence that's kind of doing all the work for you that you're not necessarily consciously aware of.
Absolutely. So it's interesting talking to you about this, because you're like, oh, you have this very academic, or you're refer to yourself as having this very academic brain, but you ended up like studying esotericism. Say the word for me, because I'm not going to get it.
Hard. It's so esotericism. It took me, I think, like by the time I completed the program, I was able to say it.
Like, do you think like you're like, ooh, the mysteries? Like, what? When you were like a kid, right, like 12, did you imagine growing up to be an astrologer?
No, I did not. I would have been drawn to all this stuff. If someone said, "Hey, I'd love to do an astrology reading for you," I would have always thought that was super cool. I don't think I didn't get into practicing it until later in life. But I think that, what I would have focused on myself, because I thought like the X-Files was really cool when I was a kid. And I was like, oh, I'd love to research mysteries. I think that that's where I was kind of at. And like, I'd be like, oh, I'd love to sort of study the paranormal or research mysteries in a way, I think I am doing that.
And you did, right? Okay. So I want to get there without like, I'm going to try to do this in a linear fashion, which is very hard for me. So, okay. Like 12-year-old you was like watching the X-Files. Tell me about like, what did you end up, like, what did you want to be when you grew up, and what did you end up studying?
Yeah, for a while, I have Neptune in my 10th house. Yeah. And so absolutely any sort of career direction was extremely elusive to me for a very long time, which can happen wherever Neptune is, especially if it's in the 10th or on the midheaven. But I think that, what I knew I liked working one-on-one with people. I really liked also, talking to people and figuring out what was going on with them. I thought maybe for a while that I would do psychology or therapy or something like that. But then in college, that interest just sort of went away. But it's kind of combined. I mean, I didn't have the idea of astrology when I was a kid. I had a love of mysteries, research, and investigation, and I had an interest in working with people. And then I think it naturally, dovetailed into astrology.
Interesting. At what point, I've asked you this before, I'm going to ask you again for the sake of this interview. What was your first encounter with magic? Were you a practitioner when you were like a teenager, or were you just like, was there any sort of,
Yeah, I have always been a little bit fearful of it.
Okay.
I've had a little bit of like an awe. Like I almost always believed it enough to never want to fuck with it. Was sort of like my feeling as a kid. So I wasn't one of those kids who really wanted to like pull out the spell book and start doing things. I was always like, I believe in this stuff. I don't understand how it works, and I'm terrified as hell because of that. That was how I felt, and I just kind of like it was scary. It was really scary, and I guess that showed that I had some belief in it, that it could even scare me that much. However, I started to realize, I think a little bit later, that magic was incredibly mundane in a weird way.
Tell me about that.
That I think. Like, it depends on what your definition of magic is, but I kind of like the idea of intuition and action coming together to manifest something.
Okay.
And like, for example, I notice a lot when people fall in love. Yeah. If you've ever heard someone say something like, oh my God, I saw him in a party and I said to my best friend, I'm going to marry that guy. And that's your father, or something like that. Like there's really witchy stuff that happens around love. Really like crazy stuff where people get these insights. Like I saw her and it was like this lightning bolt came in my head, and I knew that she was going to be significant in my life. So that stuff happens, and it's common. It's really common, and people don't think it's magical or mystical or anything. They just kind of, or have you ever noticed like when someone goes through a breakup and then they do a checklist of like, next guy has to have a job and, be emotionally available. And then it like 6 months later, it shows up, like be careful with checklists. Be very like, that is witchy stuff. Like it will happen. So really make sure that you're thinking through it. But I do notice there's some,
on that note, I'm sure you get these clients too, but now it makes sense, especially tarot clients, how often I get mostly women, I mean, most of my clients are women, coming in and like just pissed off because they're like angry with their boyfriend or husband or whatever, and they're just so like, they're like, is he cheating on, there's something, they're just pissed off, and then they're like, this is my fault, I called him in, I did the checklist, didn't do the checklist right, like,
oh my God,
that happens.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's really, really interesting. And then what is there any like trend or pattern you usually see when you're doing a reading? Like does the reading help affirm or confirm something to them, or does it help them see their role in like what happens?
I think of the best readings, right? You're like you're co-creating, especially with tarot, you're inhabiting a space with someone. So most of the time I'm telling people things they already know.
Yeah.
Right. But hearing someone else say it is just like that whoa moment of like,
yeah.
Well, there could be someone else. And they're like, is there a pregnant? He got her pregnant, whatever it is. Like just some like but if anything, yeah, I think the best readings to me always like verify what people know, but they're trying to like pretend they don't know. And sometimes they actually want to just feel seen in that way. But that's a whole.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I say this to clients all the time because I'll have somebody come in and, you know, maybe they hear my spiel first, you know, like if someone wants to talk, they can talk. I can also talk for 90 minutes, you know, and not get any feedback from them. And that's fine too. But I'll be doing my spiel. I'll be like, well, you know, you've got Uranus trining your moon next year, and it's the moon rules your nadir. And, you know, are you planning on moving or making some big changes to your house? And it's like, they'll be like, you know, my job just changed so I can remote from home, and now I can live wherever I want. So I have been thinking about moving, you know, and next year would actually be perfect because blah, 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 blah. And so it's kind of like, exactly. And when what that says to me is everyone is intuitive. Like it's like there's nothing special. I mean, maybe some people are more in touch with it than others, but like we all have this capacity. And that, you know, when we're stuck in our own heads all the time, we have this stream of consciousness of all these feelings and intuitions and ideas. But going to somebody who practices divination and having that be objectified and externalized for you really can help out. You know, and again, it's kind of like it can help out because, and it gives you like what you said, that whoa moment, because it's like sometimes affirmation is all they kind of need. And it's also that confirmation that everything's connected. It is very mystical. It's extremely mystical. And the mystical comes from mundane, you know, like, am I moving? Should I stay with him? How do I deal with my boss? You know, these things which seem so unmystical. And then astrology all of a sudden mystifies them. It's so cool.
That's a great point. And I think maybe perhaps the best reading, I'd love your thoughts on this. The best readings are the ones where you affirm and then you get to let them know this is a season. Because most of the time, if you have thoughtful, intuitive clients and there's a big transit happening, they'll already be feeling it. Like they already know the story. It's just about us to help them tease that out. And there is something really beautiful about, or even when you sit with a client and they've gone through something really difficult and like a transit's just ended and they sit in your chair and you can go,
yeah,
how are you doing? You've been through a rough time. They're like,
yeah.
No, you're like, we've moved on from this.
Yeah,
like,
this chapter is closed. I know. And that can also feel really, really good too. No, absolutely. Knowing and showing that there's a beginning, middle, and end to things that they're going through, even rough things. And I feel like, that's absolutely something very, very helpful. And again, it's about directing attention, like, you know, like, and I've said that, I think I've said this before to you, but like everyone is always very acutely aware of where their bad luck is coming from or where their challenge is coming from. Like if you point out Saturn in the natal chart, people will be like, oh yeah, ouch. Yeah. You know, but sometimes it's like, with lucky, easier transits or opportunities being handed to them, like people are a little less aware of that stuff. So sometimes even pointing it out, being like, okay, you know, challenges are happening at your job, but things are going well in your relationship. And they'll be like, yeah, they are. yeah, we're having a good year together. Yeah, we're having fun. And I'm like, yeah, that's going to keep going. Focus on that right now if you're having a hard day. Like sometimes showing where the good luck is or the bad luck. And again, I'm even disagreeing with myself, casting it in these binary terms that but sometimes even pointing out where things are kind of flowing, and there's always something flowing well anywhere, even if you're going through the worst time of your life, there's something, and the planets don't just disappear on you for a while. They'll, everyone's always at play. But I think that also helps too. It gives you the perspective.
Absolutely. You got shaky for a minute.
Your image just froze. Oh, there you are.
I'm here. Yes, you. Okay. I don't know why I have.
Oh, you're here. You hear me?
I can hear you. This is wonderful. Where do I take it next? Okay, so bring this back. Magic is mundane. Okay, so maybe we'll kind of jump to this because you have 2 art history degrees. You worked in academics in the art world, right? So tell me about that life. And I'm curious to know how that life turned into this life, the full-time astrologer I have in front of me.
Wow.
Not
yeah. Sorry, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
Oh, so how that life, right, in arts and academics sort of turned into this person, this wonderful full-time astrologer I have before me.
Well, I would say I probably got into higher education, A, because I was lost with what I wanted to do. B, honestly, I had kind of an intellectual inferiority complex.
Oh my God, I have that too. I still have it.
I know. I mean, like, it's so funny. And I just always school was hard for me. I was dyslexic and I had to work so hard to just kind of get a B- or a C+. So I had a little bit of a complex too, I think, about it. But then when I saw that there were things that I was interested in that I could study full time, and I was like, oh my God, you mean I can look at alchemical manuscripts all day and be in a library by myself and just kind of write my thoughts out? That's when I was just like, okay, this is really fun. And I did enjoy that. Some people, I think higher education is easier. And other people, primary education, whatever. So it was, so I think that those are how I ended up there. And I think it helped train my mind. I think that, I got some skills. It was just kind of, practice writing, practice, reading and coming up with ideas. And I think I got some skills out of it. But yeah, and there's a little bit, and again, the world of art and the world of symbolism, because I was always studying symbolism. And now, like I said, now I don't have to tell people I speak only one language. I'll say English and astrology.
Yeah.
Like astrology is my second language. And I tell clients all the time, like, I'm just a language interpreter. I'm just an interpreter.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so exciting. I don't think people quite understand this when you meet, like, anytime I meet an astrologer, it's exciting, right? Because you get to speak the language.
Exactly.
It's such an exhilarating thing. And I like to tell that to clients too, if they're at all interested in astrology, is this is a language. You can learn the logic and you can dive in and start speaking it and quit just watching random TikTok videos on astrology.
Yeah. And, I heard the astrologer who I love, Rob Hand, say that if astrology is a language, then that implies that there's an intelligence, which is interesting, and which I'm starting to jam with more. Like there's some type of cosmic consciousness you're having a conversation with. And I see it to be benevolent.
I've always wondered that. I mean, is it like, especially when you, like, there is that moment of astrology, like that sort of the divination act. Absolutely. But that really trips me out when it comes to tarot. Like, it trips me out in astrology, but really tarot, right? Just like pull some cards, just look at a story and just say the story to someone else. Like, man with a stick, like, full bellied woman, like, is someone pregnant? And they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, I have no fucking clue. Like, and you're like, who's doing this? Yeah, that intelligence, like, is it the daimon? Is it some other? I have no clue. If someone,
Yeah. And I mean, there's something, and maybe the difference between tarot and astrology is that, astrology feels maybe more fixed because, the planets are just going to chart their course and you're going to be born at this point. You're going to live 80 years. The course is going in this direction. But maybe tarot feels more spontaneous. I don't know. Like, how would you, because you practice tarot way more than I do. So what are the nuances and what are the implications?
I mean, it's interesting because I should say, right, there are these moments, you get them with astrology too. I'm sure you've had them where you'll look at someone's like difficult moon trend, like, Saturn moon transit or something. And you're like, is your mom okay? And they're like, well, and you're like, oh shit. They're like, those, of course, I mean, astrology does that too. But I think the way I view it is astrology is like this really sort of sophisticated clock. So we can see what happened, we can see what's going to happen, and we can place you in this story. Whereas if someone comes to me and they're like, what should I do? Like, I don't know what, like, I need advice right now. And to me, then it's like, okay, we could see the weather, as you say, right? Like, okay, we see there's some like relationship challenges, but then we can like open it up with tarot. Tarot tends to be more personal of like, okay, let's get to the nuances of the story. Maybe it's a visual language. At least that's how I work with it. I love, my bulk of my studies are in astrology. I'm a way more intuitive tarot reader. That sounds horrible, but I'm not a tarot expert is what I'm trying to say, but that's at least how I work with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the idea of tarot being more personal, because I mean and I liked your almost mechanistic metaphor for astrology, that there's this clockwork going on all around us, and it's going to affect our own internal clockwork, which is the natal chart that we're carrying with us all of our lives. And it's like, well, are we getting some aspect, some ray from some planet that's influencing, but then it seems like, so you're saying tarot, it's not like the cards are telling the story for everyone in the room or what's going on with the world at large, but it's just very focused on the person that you are reading for. So like that word of using a more personal, it feels a bit more personal. Do you feel like tarot is therefore, is it prescriptive? Is it like telling them what actions to take? Or is it just helping them be aware of the situation better? Or like,
it depends on the reader, right? So I know tarot readers and people who just do tarot. And so someone will come up to them and say, what's my year going to be like? And they'll pull cards. And I'm like, no, like, I'll look to your astrology chart, right? Like, I know that I have this thing that does that really well. So, okay, like, let's look to the chart. Let's see what the year is going to look like. But then there'll be moments where like, they can't decide, like, is this the right house to buy? Right. And I could maybe look to the chart and see things of like, maybe now is the, like, timing wise, I think I look to the chart, but like, maybe I'll pull cards. This is what it looks like if you get the house. This is what it looks like if you don't get the house. And we can almost like invite them into that nuanced story. Right? In a way, like I always tell people, like, I'm not here, the cards aren't here to tell you what you should do, but we can definitely open up that story. And I think maybe having the visual language is really helpful for people, because it's something like, if you're staring at like the tower on my table, right, that might resonate with you a lot more than me telling you about Uranus. Right? So I think there's layers to it, and I think it's personal, but at least with me, I can open up. I like to open up conversations with people, but that's in general how I like to work. I think
very cool. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm definitely the opening up conversations, and I can read both ways, because there's some people who just don't want to talk, and that's fine with me too. Like I'm an astrologer. We're long-winded by nature. But at the same time, what helps, I think, with the conversation is it'll help me identify the influences and be like, when they bring something up and I'm like, that's so Uranus. Where's Uranus? Okay. And again, it helps with the pattern recognition, because I'm starting to see all divination as a form of pattern recognition.
Dude, doesn't it trip you up? Like, when you kind of a non sequitur, but I was at the Brooklyn Museum yesterday and just kind of wandering around, and there was this painting, and I remember looking at this painting going, man, this feels like so Saturn and Pisces sure enough, this painting is having its Saturn return right now. And that happened to me like all throughout the museum. Like I was like, there was an exhibit and it was like, oh, origin story 1995 or whatever. And when you just start seeing the astrology everywhere and you can't turn it off, that gets really trippy.
That is amazing. That is really, really cool. And maybe your practice, because since you work with planetary hours and you do ritualistic stuff, maybe you're opening up again that conduit of like, I guess it's just a constant interfacing with astrology, in just your everyday life.
Yeah. Does that? Oh, I'm just getting geeky and excited too. I was having a really great reading with someone yesterday who had this like just hyped up Jupiter. Like it was like it was exalted, it was angular, it was a day chart. It was just
You were reading for them?
For them. Yeah. They had this badass Jupiter. And out of nowhere, they're like, you know what? I don't know. I've always really liked Jupiter as a planet. Like I've always felt this affinity to Jupiter. I'm like, do you know your chart? No, why?
Yep. No, and that's a lot of like the traditional astrology, which looks at planetary strength.
Yeah.
I feel like that because you do traditional as well. And I started with modern and I've been getting more into traditional. But it is interesting when I do think it's helpful to look at who are the prominent planets, who's really strong, and to me, a strong planet means that it's good at being itself. And it's a big theme in somebody's life. And then again, I think people really identify with their strong planets, and they really connect to it.
Which is coming back to all we're doing is translating. I'm like, well, you already know this. Like you already work with this thing. You already see how this happens in your chart. But I'm here to say like, cool.
Yep, exactly.
And they're like, whoa.
And that's half of it. That's absolutely like the externalizing, the objectifying what's going on inside the client and showing it to them and being like, here. And they're like, yes, that's no. And what does that tell us? I mean, it tells us about the interconnectedness of everything.
Absolutely.
How could any of this work? How could we speak the astrological language together? How could the chart, perfectly reflect what's going on inside the client or around their life if everything wasn't interconnected?
I mean, don't you wish you had an explanation for that?
Like explanation how?
Because like people are like, how does astrology work? And I'm like, I have no idea. It works. Like, I don't know.
I mean, the only thing, and again, I can't say like I can know this as somebody would know something discreetly, like 2 + 2 = 4. But I guess my answer to that is everything is connected.
Yeah.
Everything and therefore if everything is connected, then there are these kind of like interlacing patterns among things, and it's just pattern recognition. Like, where have you come from? Where are you now? Where is that pattern going?
Kind of again, I love talking to you because I always feel like I'm a little get interviewed and we get in these really lovely loops. I'm going to go with it here, but do you ever have clients that like it always angry, and maybe not even clients, it always frustrates me when people are like, well, like they try to like do the like test the psychic. They're like, oh yeah, you're just like recognizing patterns. And I'm like, but like if it gives you meaning in your life, does it matter? Does that make sense? Do you know, like I'm trying to like articulate this, but like the person I'm talking about, like, is this even real? Are you just reading the room?
I know the testers. I definitely know the testers, and I respect them because I was a tester. Like there's a part of me that kind of sometimes, early on would kind of sit and look at people in the reading and be like, you tell me, and that's fine. That's fine. But are you saying, like, for example, like when you tell them things they already know, they're like, well, I already knew that. Are you just reading me? Are you just really good at psychologizing me? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Because I mean, I think to me, it's like, when I open a reading up, I really want to open it up and I want to create a space. And the best readings, again, are where people are collaborative. Like they say, okay, yeah, that is happening, but let's talk about it. And they're willing to participate. And you get people that are just like, well, how do I know this is even true? Like they want, they want some sort of external truth that just feels like it comes out of nowhere, when I think part of it is just the process of being able to discuss things, if that right.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of like, well, I already knew that. Or even you know, how do I know you're not just like, you know, what is it, what are people, I'm trying to think of like big skeptical things. How do I know you're not just like planting seeds or something?
Like, okay, yeah, that they are that well, first of all, that's assigning you a great deal of power, isn't it? If you have the power to direct people's free will and actions in their life, like, I mean, God, you should be a billionaire by now. You know, like that should be the ultimate industry of self-help. But it's like, and again, if they're like, why are you planting seeds? You're like, wow, you must think I'm incredibly powerful, that I have an ability to direct your actions and to, you know.
Doesn't it trip you up when people are always like, I don't know, maybe I think I get this more than most just because of the nature of where I read, but people are like, tell me the future. They're like, I'm like, so what do you want to talk about? The future. Tell me the future. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, if I like really like, if I just had like voices coming down and like telling me like every moment of like the future, like, would I even be here? Maybe. Can I get some better messages?
Yeah. Maybe the response is, what future do you need to make? Like, do you need to work on making your love future, your career future? And now we can start working on it. I don't know.
I'm like, the future's a big conversation, people.
Yeah. Do you use tarot for understanding world events? Because sometimes I guess people will approach and talk to an astrologer in terms of like, well, what's the future of the world? Like, what are we going through right now? And do you use tarot for world events, or is it too much of a personal conversational space?
You know, that's interesting. I mean, there are plenty of tarot readers who do. For me, if I want to understand world events, again, I'm going to look to an astrology chart, because we have these like wonderful, like mundane astrology, and there's all these wonderful astrologers who've made that their life. And I will, check out what they have to say about the matter. But I suppose if someone like wants to know what's going on, I mean, you can really open up any conversation, and people don't ask me that often, but what I always am fascinated by is when like checking in with people. Like, I have a few people that I share my daily tarot draws with, and you'll find that like a lot of your friends are pulling the same card over and over again.
Cool.
That's a level of interest to me. But absolutely, I know there are some amazing tarot readers out there who do mundane stuff. But
wow. Okay, very, very cool. And then maybe tarot, or if you're using the mundane in tarot, could it be like, how are these world events affecting you? Like if the economy does this, or
yeah, I mean, that's my level of comfort. I'd be like more like, that feels a lot safer. But yeah, there are definitely, I mean, there are, there are some amazing tarot readers. Camellia Elias is the first one who's coming to my mind, is like my favorite. Like, if I could read like her, I think I would only read tarot.
Cool. You were telling me about her before. How do you spell her last name?
Elias.
Elias. Cool.
She's like who I aspire to be as a human. That
very
sounds
cool.
So creepy, but
nothing wrong with being inspired. You inspire me to do more tarot. You really inspired me. Yeah, and I'm practicing right now. Maybe you can give me a little advice. I'm turning this into a help me session, but right now I'm just doing the kind of drawing a card every day and familiarizing myself with the deck by just seeing how it might influence my day. Is that a good way to start?
I think so. Well, I'll tell you how I do it. So I'm going to just preface this with, I thought tarot was the dumbest thing forever. Studying astrology, because most people I think study tarot and then they get into astrology, but I was studying astrology pretty intensely, and I'm like, why do I need tarot? And again, I started this book at this job at this esoteric bookstore, which is known for having tarot readers, psychic mediums, et cetera, but like no other astrologers. There was one at the time, but I'm the only one now. And I would get clients, and they're like, well, a lot of our clients, they kind of warned me, aren't really into astrology. And so I was like, oh, I know a little tarot because of like the decans and things like this. I was sort of whatever. And I was doing readings for people and they were just bored out of their mind. Like there'd be certain people who are like, why are you staring at your computer? I'm like, it's an astrology chart. And so I had to learn tarot so quick. So I was getting lessons from my friend in Croatia, who's Space Tiger Tarot, who's amazing. And I was literally like praying. I'm like, talk to me, tarot, which I think is also kind of reflective of like my learning style. And I've noticed two things. One, with the daily pulls. By the way, I also say this, T. Susan Chang is an excellent resource. She's a little heady for me, but she's probably phenomenal for learning tarot. Also, Camelia Elias. T. Susan Chang has a really great online tarot program. And Camelia Elias, I hope I'm not butchering her name, is an amazing tarot teacher, has a whole school. That being said, I like to pull 2 cards a day, right? I'll do like a card and then another card. And then because I want to kind of look for those cards throughout my day, but I'll also see how they talk to each other because that's part of it, right? It's like, oh, how are the cards having correspondence? And then you can start seeing like, do they appear in like paintings, right? And for you as a symbolic person, I think the best advice I learned, this is a Camelia Elias thing, is just to read the cards, right? And so stop trying to memorize things, but being like, it's a man with a stick. What's happening, right? Like, or like this is there, whatever it is, right? Like, just like, what is like, you're a visual person, like what's happening, giving yourself freedom to look at the cards like that. And then personally, the best way that I learned tarot was just doing tarot, but also getting comfortable with asking questions and then trusting the answers. So instead of just like pulling daily tarot cards, if it's something like, always ask a question where you are willing to listen to the answer. And I think that's just stuff, period, right? So say there'd be times when I couldn't decide if I want to go out. So I'd say, like, I'd pull 2 draws. What's it look like if I go out? What's it look like if I stay in? I'd pull the cards and I'd force myself to trust the card and go with the answer. And I think there's a little bit of like communing with tarot and like, again, that intelligence, that spirit, who, whatever it is, but showing that you're calling on it and you're willing to trust the answer. That was my greatest tarot teacher.
Wow. And you have Mars in Aries right on your midheaven.
Yeah.
So there's a sense of just kind of like do or die and like just take the plunge and like, that you just kind of, you were sort of thrown into it and then you just kind of found your way. And I don't know, that just seems very like Mars in Aries. Very astute. I like that much better than the running around catching everyone on fire or accidentally cutting people because I'm really good. And I like the idea of that there's an interaction between the cards and that you're, don't just do one card, but like try to start learning how to do the interaction and how they speak to each other. Again, bringing that language, storytelling element into it. So I'm definitely going to try that out. You know what we're going to do together? Now I'm going to force you to commit to a round 3 of this because we did an IG live together. You and I can hop on IG live at some point, when your calendar permits, and we'll play my favorite game, which is the tarot game, which I think is phenomenal for learning tarot. Awesome. So, I mean, the tarot game is simple, right? You just take a deck of tarot cards and I pull a card and you start the story. And then I go and we just make a story together, but it forces you to start imagery like that. I am so down. That is so cool. And the only reason we're not doing it right now is because I don't have a tarot deck near me. And also because the good people watching this, we want them to circle back and watch our IG live together. Excellent. Nice promoting. Thank you. Thank you. Man, I love talking to you because we always get these, like, I always think I have these things I'm going to ask and we go in these crazy corridors. And is that a cat? Do you have a cat? No, Luna. Let me get her. Did your dog just hop on something? Yeah, she's really small. She's like a little mouse, but she can hop up like 4 or 5 feet. I just saw this creature. Okay. This is a really great way to wrap things up. Tell me about your videos, and this is your co-star. Yes. Oh my God. So Luna is never far from my side. She's very small, so she travels everywhere with me. And in San Francisco, they let dogs in pretty much everywhere. Like I can take her shopping with me and, we're just kind of hanging out all day. And she's always been in my videos. And now when I now when I film, she expects to come in. Like when I get in the chair, I've got a green screen, and she'll always follow me into the room and kind of look up at me because she's just so used to she's used to it now. So yeah, no, she's my familiar. She's like, we are the same person. And yeah, it's like all of my maternal instincts are completely channeled towards this dog.
And for real quick, for those who are listening to this and not watching the video, can you describe Luna for us?
Oh, Luna is this little 7 pounds of just pure love. She's half dachshund. She was born on a ranch, and she is kind of scared of everything. You know, people ask if she's my emotional support animal, and I say no, I'm her emotional support human.
And finally, as we wrap this up, because I have to run, will you tell me about your videos? So for those who don't know.
Yes, I do videos for astrology.com and horoscope.com's YouTube channel. And then I make some like weekly videos for myself and I put them on YouTube. Or no, I was putting them on YouTube. I'm now putting them on Instagram. And I just talk about transits, what's going on. I want to start doing, you know, it would be fun if we could do like, I don't know, world event videos together.
I love that. I'd love to do anything with you.
Yeah. We should do some world event videos together.
Absolutely. And for those who don't watch your videos, highly recommend it.
Thank you.
I keep saying, like, to me, you're channeling MTV News. They're really fun.
That made me laugh so much. I love that.
They're really fun.
All the people old enough to remember.
I know, I'm dating myself. They're really fun. They're informative. They're light. There's a dog. You can't get any better. And I always hate like having to wrap up conversations with you, but how can people find you, like you, subscribe, all the places?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm primarily. I'm doing some contracting right now for Pandora Astrology. So you can book a session with me there. Okay.
So is it pandoraastrology.com?
I'd have to check the website.
Notes for people, but
yeah.
And
let me actually check. I think it is pandoraastrology.com.
Awesome. And then it's Julia Mihas, spelled right. Mihas on Instagram, on YouTube, on all the things, right?
On all the things.
On all the things. Fantastic.
How can people find you? Do you only work in the bookstore or do you take like?
No. I have private clients. So you can book through artofthezodiac.co. And I'm about to rehaul my entire website because it's looking a little rough. And I am, but most importantly, I am on YouTube and Instagram as Art of the Zodiac. So, and I do these talks. That's the most important thing is these talks. I mean, I love clients. Please schedule with me. But I love these interviews. I'm doing one this weekend with my dear friend, Kristen Mathis, who translates the Orphic hymns, among other things. Is the
cool.
Incredible scholar and astrologer. So she's my next talk. And yeah, Art of the Zodiac. And did you figure it out?
What was that? Oh, the website? Yes, it's pandoraastrology.com.
Fantastic. So people can book with you, Julia Mihas, pandoraastrology.com. And this has been absolutely amazing. I'm so stoked.
I had so much fun talking with you. I learned so much from you.
I learned so much from you. Okay. I really do have to run because I have to hop onto a session, but have a beautiful day, friend.
Thank you. So nice chatting with you. Mwah, mwah.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. And bye.
Show me stars in the sky.